As you know, from time to time, I have locked horns with Liberal Democrat Senator David Leyonhjelm over the past period of federal parliament. David and I disagree on lots and lots of things, including comments he's made previously about police. But in democracies, people are allowed to have their say, and I'm allowed to return serve, so to speak. There is one thing that David Leyonhjelm and I have in common, and that's our apparent disgust with the Mike Baird government in New South Wales and their actions to shut down the greyhound industry. Last month, Senator Leyonhjelm said the New South Wales government's willingness to comply with the extremist agenda of the animal rights movement is very disappointing. As a former vet practitioner, I have some knowledge of the greyhound industry, and the vast majority of participants are honest, decent people who love their dogs and love their sport. So, as I said, some strange bedfellows here. I've been inviting and participating with Luke Foley in protests about all of this, and now I have the most recently elected Liberal Democrat Senator David Leyonhjelm on the line. Senator, good morning.
Good morning.
And congratulations to your elevation.
Thank you.
Now, you have a background in all of this, and you have correctly said that most participants are honest, decent people who love their dogs and sport. Have you got any inkling as to why Mike Baird has got his knickers in a knot over this and wants to throw the baby out with the bathwater?
No, not specific details, no specific inkling, but it is part of a pattern, Ray, of the elites looking down on the workers. The blue collar, it's a blue collar sport, greyhound racing.
Yeah.
It is 150 years old, but it's never been like horse racing. That the toffs go to. It's always the blue collar people, the battlers and their dreams of winning a big one. And they get looked down on by the elites. There's this superiority attitude amongst the elites, the people who believe they have above average intelligence. They know better than the plebs. They sneer at them. It is part of a pattern. It's not just greyhounds. You and I have we haven't actually directly debated it, but
we've had blues without actually confronting each other. Yes, exactly.
In my opinion, the attitude to the Western Sydney Wanderers football supporters falls into the same pattern. We also have this attitude that you're not smart enough to choose whether or not to wear a bicycle helmet. Attitudes to smoking, where and when you can smoke, even though you're not puffing smoke in other people's faces. Attitudes to drinking, the whole lockouts thing. In Melbourne, they can stay out all night drinking. In Sydney, you've got to go home to bed early because the government says so. You're not sensible enough to drink responsibly. And it is part of that same thinking, this elitist thinking. I don't know what bugged Mike Baird to pick on the greyhound industry this time, but it is part of a general pattern, and as you quoted me saying, it also conforms to the animal rights people, their agenda. They don't want animals to be used by humans for any purpose, and ultimately they don't even want them as pets. So somehow or other, that agenda's got onto Mike Baird's agenda, and he's fallen into line with it.
One of the things that I noted in doing some research for this, and he's hung his hat to a certain extent on wastage on a flawed report from the Special Commission of Inquiry, where he says that between 48,000 and 68,000 greyhounds are, he says, murdered, killed. That's not true. The amount of greyhounds that are euthanized by vets under procedures is way fewer than that.
It's much, much less, yes.
Yeah, but I've now gone onto a website, which I've gone through this morning, and this is the thin end of the wedge, because the people you refer to, the animal rights activists, and this is where Peter V'landys and John Dumsney, the people in New South Wales who run harness racing and gallops, need to actually support greyhound racing. They're next.
Yes, that's right.
They're talking about, the number of harness racing horses who are no good for dressage because of their gait, who go to the knackery.
That's right.
And the number of thoroughbreds, who make it to the racetrack, and the rest, may end up, in a can of Pal dog food somewhere.
That's right. That's right. You're absolutely right. I mean, they're already after racing. That's why we don't have very much steeplechasing anymore. They went after that, and pretty much succeeded. They haven't made much of a dent yet on the gallopers, but yes, they're after harness racing, And they're using this argument that if they don't run fast enough, then they'll have to be put down, and you know, somehow or other that's inhuman. It isn't. It isn't inhuman or cruel or anything like that to euthanize a dog that can't run fast enough, or a horse that can't run fast enough, if you can't find a home for it. And the industry's very good at finding homes.
Yeah, sure.
But the cruel thing is if you don't euthanize the dog humanely. Now, when I was a vet in practice, I euthanized many animals, including greyhounds, and there was no pain involved. In fact, I'd really like to think that I could go that way. It would be an awful lot better than dying slowly in a hospital bed. But so there's nothing cruel about putting animals down. In fact, if it wasn't for putting animals down, we'd have no steak and no mutton and no lamb to eat.
Well, the RSPCA, who've supported the government all the way through to uphill and down Dale, legally and quite properly, when dogs and cats are left at their various centres across Australia and they're not, claimed within a certain period of time, they're also euthanized. They're
euthanized. It's done humanely, and it's numbers that are vastly bigger than what occurs in the greyhound industry. There are tens of thousands, probably nationally, hundreds of thousands of pets put to sleep by RSPCAs in each state, and way bigger numbers than the greyhound industry. There is nothing cruel about putting animals to sleep. It's the method of putting them to sleep that can be cruel. If it's not done humanely, then that should be dealt with. The same goes for live baiting. It's cruel if the bait animal is still alive. If you kill a rabbit and it's dead, but you tie it to a lure and that motivates the greyhound to chase, there's nothing cruel about that, unless the method of killing the rabbit was inhuman. The mere fact that you use a dead animal, a freshly killed animal, is not in itself cruel. Cruelty is the infliction of pain. Once you're dead, you don't feel pain anymore, obviously.
So one of the things I did yesterday, looking at, and I don't have any interest in this, but chasing pigs, feral pigs, which cause all sorts of consternation for farmers right across the country, feral animals, but pigs particularly, because of what they're able to achieve. And I noted that some legislation in New South Wales that is part of Mike Baird's government for pig dogging to be legal, so that blokes can go onto properties with the permission of the owner and take their pig dogs and get rid of feral pigs through that particular practice. Now, rabbits, I live on the rural fringes of Sydney, and of a morning when I come out and shine the headlights onto the paddock adjoining my place, I count 20, 30, 40 rabbits, and then every now and then people in the various areas put poisons out to control the rabbits, which are a pest.
Yes.
And I take your point about the way that's done, but we move on from that. Live baiting, yes, dreadful, shouldn't happen, all the rest of it, but we'll finalise it by saying, as a former vet, you've been involved. Most participants are honest, decent people who love their dogs, love their sport, and they should be left to their own devices, surely.
Indeed they should. It's a legitimate sport. It's, I don't know the history of it that much, but I'd swear it's at least 150 years old. It's not just in New South Wales that we have greyhound racing. It's in the other states and also in other countries, of course. So New South Wales is going to be the one out on when it bans this. It's a perfectly legitimate sport. If there are concerns about it, when I was in practice treating greyhounds, and I was a track vet a few times as well. My biggest concern was doping the dogs. If you've got time, I'll tell you a little anecdote.
Yeah, please do.
Our biggest concern was that the trainers, owners and so on would dope their dogs to make them run faster, and it wasn't good for the dogs.
No.
We used to argue a little bit of doping was all right, but too much and you'd kill the dog. So we felt very sympathetic to the dogs. But the dope testing in those days wasn't as good as it is these days, and they weren't so strict on it. They weren't so didn't chase them so much. So amongst us vets, we used to have a little ways of pulling dogs out of a race if we thought it wasn't good for them to run because they were too doped up. And there's a muscle inside their back leg called the pectineus muscle. So we would have to examine each dog individually before they were ready to race. And we could pull them out of the race if we had a good reason, but we had to have a reason. So we'd give that pectineus muscle inside the back leg a bit of a poke. And the dog would yelp and he'd say, no, you can't run that dog, it's lame. And we'd pull it out. So anything that we thought was too doped up, we would make it yelp, and it would probably be good for the dog's long-term health to be pulled out of that race. And since then, the greyhound industry has cleaned up the doping.
Of course it has. I mean, as has, all other sports, and they try to keep one step in front of the others.
Correct. Olympic sports, they're cleaning up the Russian athletes as well. Yeah. So, yes, that's an issue to be dealt with. But this idea that if you can't run fast enough, you either get turned into a pet or you're euthanized, and suggest that that's cruel. That isn't cruel at all, unless the method of euthanasia is cruel.
Okay, as always, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
No problem.
It's Liberal Democrat Senator in New South Wales, David Leyonhjelm.